to hire, how to hire, where to find them, how we're going to train them, all these different things.
I would start with what the outcomes are. What is it that you need them to accomplish? Don't start with the task. That's where everybody starts.
So hello, friends. Welcome back. Thanks a lot for joining us. This is Steve Taylor, the host of the Do It For Yourself podcast, where we really try to have conversations with different business owners to talk about their history, their experience, or certain experts in subject areas that really might be able to go out and help you if you are out there doing it for yourself. If you've listened before, thank you for coming back. If this is your first time, welcome. And hope you find this valuable for whatever you are doing in your business. So today's topic, it's a really timely topic for me because it's something we've been talking about in our office a lot lately, trying to think about this new role, this new person to hire, how to hire, where to find them, how we're going to train them, all these different things. And if you're involved in a growing business, right, that's a challenge or maybe an opportunity, right? If you're growing business to hire people. So I'm taking the opportunity here. I'm really, really grateful to have as our guest. She'll introduce herself very quickly, an expert in this area of how to hire and how to do it right. So Andrea, if you could give us a little introduction to everyone.
Sure. Thanks, Steve. I'm so excited to be here. So my name's Andrea Hoffer, and I founded AHA Talent Experts, and our main focus is helping companies to hire effectively. We work mostly with growing companies that hire hourly employees, but everything I'm going to talk about today, we've also applied in every sort of executive or other different types of roles. So I don't want you to feel like you're time to tune out if you don't hire hourly employees. But the reason we focus on hourly employees is because I came from the franchise world. And when I was a franchisee, I always said, I wish there was a company that helped franchisees or help businesses that hired these frontline employees to help them hire, because there wasn't a lot of help out there unless you had executive roles that you were looking for.
Yeah.
So that's why I eventually founded AHA Talent Experts.
That's awesome. So Andrea, let's go in right to then your specialty, right? And because that's a great place to start, because I think a lot of companies and a lot of firms out there, when they're looking to hire, as their needs are growing, right? They're trying to determine, hey, do I want a full-time person? Do I want a part-time person? Do I want someone go part-time to kind of full-time, right? So when a company's out there, when it's growing and like you said, and their needs are rising and they're trying to make that determination, how do you help walk them through to determine, hey, do I need someone hourly? Do I need someone full-time or like temp to perm? How do you go about that analysis with them?
We start in what we call the defined stage. So we have the dream hire framework. And a lot of times our clients want to, they just want to bypass the define, and we have to keep bringing them back there. Whether that you want part-time, full-time, whatever, or not, you still need to spend a lot of time there. And if you're trying to figure out how many hours a week you need from somebody and what that looks like, I would start with what the outcomes are. What is it that you need them to accomplish? Don't start with the task. That's where everybody starts. Start with what is it going to look like in a week, in 30 days, 60 days, if this person is successful and you've hired the right person, you've guided them well, and you've given them enough capacity, enough hours to accomplish that. And that helps you to start gearing in. I will say I've often started people as I've started, if I grow or shrink a little and grow again, because given the economy, sometimes that happens. I have developed roles where they might start out with 20 hours. And I often even see it within a month or two go to full time. And there are a lot of people out there who are willing to do that or who even want to stay at at the 20 hours. So don't think you're not going to find what you need and that you have to fill this traditional type role.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Andrea, because I have something. If do you know about the EOS system and
I
traction?
do.
And
I'm very
okay,
familiar. We've run
so
on. Yep.
yeah, a lot of people run on it, and so we create this. They talk about an accountability chart,
Mhm.
and I create this accountability chart. I don't know if it's exactly how they do it, but it really gets longer. And what I really focus on, interesting because you say this, I focus on the tasks, right? I focus on the area. I focus on what we need people to do, and I see names that I put in there or new hires going into all these different areas, right? And you're saying don't focus on the task but focus on the goal. So walk me through a little bit about that, right? Because I kind of look at my accountability chart and see where we're falling short on certain tasks, right? And it's very detail oriented like that. But you're saying keep the big picture and goals in mind. How does that look?
Yeah. So when we do even just job descriptions before we're going out and doing the job posting, we will write out anywhere from 5 to 6 outcomes that we're looking for from this role. And then under those outcomes, we will put the tasks, the responsibilities, the actions that these people need to take regularly in order to accomplish that. And I've been doing that for years, but it's even more important now with AI coming in, because while our outcomes for a lot of our projects and things are the same, the way of getting there is different and faster in many ways, and might even need different skills if we're talking about knowing how to use certain automation and certain AI. So it's really about what are the goals for your, I'm sure with EOS, you have your goals for your business for the year, for the quarter, for the week, breaking it all down and then connecting them to those people in that accountability chart, but making sure it's not just about tasks, it's about the outcomes and then what tasks will need to get them there. I found that even over the years, as I bring team members on, they find new, better ways to accomplish the outcomes I'm looking for. And as
Yeah.
long as you're open to that within guidelines, you have to make sure it's still the way you want to show up as a company, but it usually is, especially if you hired for core values, then you'll be amazed at the results that you'll get, and how you get there is so much easier.
Yeah, it's interesting. You hit the hot topic, right? AI, AI, AI. I laugh
Well,
because you and I was brushing back and fighting off our note takers as we started this Zoom
right.
meeting, right? They want to come in and no, we don't need you. We don't need you. So when you mentioned there the utilization of AI, are you mentioning that AI helps you make a better job description, or are you saying an aspect of the job description is how good these people can utilize AI and get their end job done?
I think it's a little bit of both. However, you need to use AI effectively. So I
Okay.
actually want to touch on the second part of what you said. We have to accept the fact that AI is here, right? And it's a part of all of our jobs. Even if we're not feeling it right now, in the next month, 6 months, I don't even think it's going to take a year. Pretty much every role, including even customer facing hourly employees. We're working with a lot of companies to help with training using AI to help them be more effective as far as training goes. So we need to get comfortable with it, and we need to understand how that fits into everything that we're doing. I usually have anywhere from 4 to 6 different AI models going at once. Sometimes I feel like I'm just managing a team of AIs, but it makes it easier to, let's say, with job descriptions. We
Mhm.
focus a lot on job postings. We don't typically do a ton of job descriptions for clients. We consider job descriptions more of an internal expectation document, whereas job postings is taking that and putting it into a marketing piece to attract the right people for that
Mhm.
role in your culture. So I define that just so you know I'm I term them differently. But we have a very specific formula for job postings, and that we've developed over the years that really works in attracting the right people. And I used to pay copywriters. I would train them on my formula, and we, during our discovery session, which is part of the defined stage, we would record the session. Now, when we record it, we have a transcript, which is amazing. Before, we would just take the recording and give it to the copywriter, as well as whoever the recruiter was going to be, and the sourcer. Sourcer meaning reaching out to candidates who may not have applied. The passive. It's not everybody knows that term, so I like to define it. And it took a long time and a lot of people. Now we just take the transcript, we feed it into. I like using Claude for the job postings. That's been a project that's been trained on our formula, and it asks us a few questions, and it spits out 90% there. I mean, you still need that human interaction to make sure it's getting everything right, but we're still getting the same outcome.
Okay.
Maybe even better, only because the AI might capture certain quotes that the client said, and the nuisances or the authenticity from the client of how they describe something. The AI is just sometimes a little bit better at capturing that and putting that in the posting in such a way that speaks to people. And that's been fascinating to me.
Yeah, that's really interesting, that you say that, because I was going to follow up, and you kind of answered it, that we use AI in our business too, right? And we use it some of our marketing. And what I find is that when we use these AI tools, the marketing assistant that I have, she's overseas, it comes out and it gives me this text, which honestly, it feels robotic.
Right.
It's like humans don't speak that way, right? And I get it, and items like that. So I always have to modify, and I talk to her. I'm like, people don't talk this way. It's not everything can be fabulous and amazing and all this stuff. But what are you finding? So you said that in some instances, right, your goal is the same, but in some instances it's even better. Can you give us a little examples of maybe somehow how it's better, and maybe somehow maybe how it's not better, right? And how you still need that human side? Because I think a lot of people, that when they hear AI, when they're hesitant to go into it, they're like, it's going to be a lot of work, and it's not going to really give me what I want.
Just like with training people, you need to train whatever AI you're using. So I would say, garbage in, garbage out. If you just say to ChatGPT, write me a job posting for an executive assistant job, you're going to get a very generic job that's not really going to speak to who you want. But if you take the time to have somebody ask you, like we ask for a lot of stories up front, and just kind of pull that heart piece out of what you're looking for, not just the skills, but who's successful here. What is your culture like? Tell us stories that tell us how these culture items, how these core values come out, and feed it to the AI. It's very good at taking unstructured data. That's what it's, what they call it, and structuring it and pulling out. Now, sometimes I need to go back and forth with it and say, I remember in this conversation with this particular client that they talked about something about how they think about their grandmother when they bake their cakes. Can you pull that quote and put it in here? So sometimes you'll remember something, it won't, but you won't remember it exactly. And the AI will, if you pull it out. So it's like having a conversation with it, but it has all this knowledge. Does that make sense? Like, so the more you train it and feed it and give it examples, if you're working on marketing, give it examples of your past posts, your past articles. I posted an article every Wednesday. I post an article on LinkedIn around my dream hiring process, and I knew the topic. I wanted. I knew, what I wanted to put into it. I already have a project in Claude that's trained on the dream hire process. And so I just gave it a couple of directions of, here's where I want you to focus. Here's a topic, but pull in things. It's trained on my book. It's trained on, all about me. So it writes like me. And I will say I usually end up spending anywhere from 40 minutes to an hour on refining the article each week, but it takes me, pretty far along.
Yeah. That's wonderful. So let me go back, Andrea, and talking, you mentioned there you're on LinkedIn and you're putting your posts and your articles out there, right? So, and we talked about what your specialty is finding these hourly people. So I think, a lot of people as they come into and they go to look for that new hire, there are a lot of these tools out there, right? There's like LinkedIn jobs, all these different things. And I think some people and I've gone out, I've experimented on my own, whether LinkedIn or other places, and you can get some awful candidates. Every once in a while, you get lucky. But so how does that work? Like working with a company like yours, right? That all these other tools are out there, try to make it, real easy. How does talent experts, for example, how do they come in? Like you mentioned your process, right? You don't need to put anything proprietary you don't want to out there, but why is your process different, right? How is it working with you better than somebody in your company say, hey, go post a job on LinkedIn?
First of all, I don't mind sharing about my process because I write about it.
Okay, please do then. Please do.
So we followed the Dream Hire framework, and I already mentioned a little bit about define, and now you're getting into reach. How do you reach these candidates? Yes, you still can do, if it's a job where there are people on LinkedIn, because sometimes a lot of our jobs, that's LinkedIn is not a good option for us. But if you have a job that works with LinkedIn, get your posting right first. And you'll, if you want to visit my LinkedIn, there's lots of information on job postings there. But one of the things we highly recommend is to have 4 or 5 engaging questions at the beginning. Don't start with a description of your company or anything like that. You want something that's going to pull people in immediately that says, that's me. Yeah, and they could be simple. So we typically will, define the job, everything we need, but then sort of summarize it in those 4 to 5 questions so that somebody's either saying, yes, that's me over and over again, and then we'll hopefully continue to read, which most candidates won't continue to read the full posting. So you want to engage them as much as possible. Or they'll say, oh, no, that's not me. And that's even better.
Yes.
To your point, I don't have to deal with them. Now, unfortunately, there are a lot of automated ways to apply for lots of jobs. And we find that a lot of the applications that come in through all the different job boards, the candidates don't even know they applied for those jobs. Because you can now, especially with AI, but even before AI, this was possible where you can just kind of set certain search parameters and they're not very on target. And so sometimes you are going to still get a lot of applications. We typically will recommend doing what's called knockout questions on LinkedIn, Indeed, whatever platform you're using with, 2 or 3 things, not a ton, but 2 or 3 things that if they don't meet those minimum standards, you wouldn't consider them. So that way, if they say no, or, answer it in the opposite way you want, then they'll automatically get a rejection and you don't even have to screen it.
Let me ask you real quick, Andrea, because I've noticed that, right? I've seen the knockout questions in LinkedIn. I've tried it, items like that. And to your point of AI, so AI is not sophisticated enough to get past the knockout questions? Or can they still potentially get past the knockout questions to where somebody's, because I mean, you get applications, you're like, they didn't read at all what this is about, right?
Yeah.
Can the knockout questions help weed out AI, or is AI still a little smarter than the knockout questions?
we're finding that it still works, but it probably won't be for long. So here's what we've been doing for years. If you are doing a good number of hiring, get a good applicant tracking system. It's a software that helps you manage your hiring. Most businesses that hire regularly, whether it's hourly employees or um, any role, it will have some sort of software, which is called an ATS, applicant tracking system. And we will typically put a question in there that it's not necessarily going to automatically knock them out, but we like to put in there, could you share with us a couple of sentences of why you're passionate about this role?
Got it.
And so then if they skip it, they'll be knocked out, but it also makes it easier to screen, through. So really, and sometimes it stops people from applying because we make it as, you have to answer it. It's
Right.
required in
Yeah.
order to submit the application. So we don't ask for cover letters. There's a whole debate over whether cover letters are dead. And if we do ask for a cover letter with certain roles, it's not till later on in the process, because you want to make it as easy as possible for them to apply through their phone, because often they'll be searching jobs, waiting online or someplace where they're just scanning on their phone, and you don't want them to think, oh, this is interesting, but then lose it or forget about it later. So if you're going to have them do any extra work, besides that one little question, I would then have it as the next step. Like we ask them to do a one-way video.
Oh,
And
interesting.
that's been very successful for us with all different roles, especially sales roles or any kind of roles where they interact with people regularly.
That's really interesting. That's we're thinking about doing an internship, and we found some students, and I was thinking about potentially, if I do an initial interview with them, like kind of record it to see how it is and then send it to the team. Hey, what do you think of this person, and items like that. But that's a great idea, the one-way video. My wife's an actress, right? So it's all about all the auditions and everything. It's all online. Right. And so everything's being submitted that way, and that's how they're getting to know you through video. So I think that's a great idea, right? That can be really, really powerful.
Yeah, we've been doing it for over a decade, and it saved a couple of our clients during COVID, because we had clients who would do in-person like group interviews because we're a big fan of them. And then all of a sudden they're like, what do we do? So we said, well, let's use the one-way video, and we can do a lot at once because they're doing it on their own time. We don't have to be there.
Yeah. So you've gone through, you focused on the goal, you posted it out there, you've done a creative, inviting posting, you've gotten them to apply, we've done knockout questions, you've got them to that point, and so now you get a pool of applicants, right? And they come in. What's your process of going through to say, hey, let's figure out the ones that, do you go and interview them more before you introduce them to the client? Or kind of what's that process of, once you have those applicants to get in there, to deciding, how to introduce them to the client, to go forward and make a hire?
I will talk to that, but we skipped the E.
Okay, please. Yes.
Sorry.
I wasn't sure. I was trying. I didn't know if I was on par. Please put me E.
Because it's very important. I just want to touch on it. E is engage. So there's all this stuff happening, right? In between getting people in your universe and screening their applications and anything else. Engage is so important to keep the candidates informed. And we have a policy, if you will, that we will touch base with our candidates at least within 3 business days. Our goal is within 24 hours, but we don't let 3 business days go by. And even if it's just, we haven't heard back from the client, or we're still getting through a lot of applications, we're still interested, anything very brief. So I just wanted to mention the E. And now you're kind of getting us into assess.
Well, hold on a second. E is very interesting, right? You try to keep them engaged. So you say you try to respond to them kind of pretty quickly within 3 days. And I guess it might not be linear, right? Because you have maybe a time period going on that. So how is that engaged process? I never really thought about that. That's why I have the expert here. You keep them, is it kind of keeping them on the line for a longer period of time? Or, do you put them through some additional hurdles to make sure they really, really want this? How does that engage process go more?
It changes with each client because each client has some specific things that they're looking for. But typically we have the one-way video, and that's by reviewing the video, we determine whether or not we're either gonna phone screen or Zoom them or the client. So that kind of depends on the engagement the client has with us. But quite often it's going to the client at that point, but we want to still make sure the candidate knows, hey, we sent your video to the client. They're going through it. You just want you to know that you're not, you haven't been lost in the shuffle. So, and we have different templates to make it easier and different automations, as well. And I do want to mention, we're not really using AI that much at any of these points. We're using AI a lot more during the define process,
Right.
helping us brainstorm. Like I often will say with clients, if they're not sure how their values actually show up on a day-to-day basis, I say, well, let's go to ChatGPT and let's put in different information and ask it, do you have some ideas? Here are our values, here what we know, here's some stories. Can you list 5 observable behaviors that we should see from someone living our values? And so we use AI much more during that phase, and some maybe designing the templates and the recruitment marketing. But I just want to be clear, we're not at this point using AI very heavy in the screening, uh, just because I'm still testing it. I just don't want to lose people. I would rather have them do the one-way video. And if they choose not to do that, well, then they're not the right fit for the role. They're not interested in following the process. Then have an AI tell me, because our tools will often have an AI built into it, and it will say this person's a good fit, and I'll look at it and say why,
Yeah.
or vice versa. So I just wanted to clarify that. But once we get them to the interview stage, if we're doing the interview, we have a very customized list of questions that we did based on what we discovered during the define stage.
Hmm.
If our clients are doing it, we prepare them and do some training with them with the questions and what to listen for. And we write our interview questions in a very specific way. And we do have AI help us with
Okay.
that, and it knows the formula. Again, if you have a very specific formula for AI to follow and data to fill into it, it's a great option. But we start all of our questions with, could you share? Or at least most of our questions. And the reason for that is because it's very conversational. It tends to take, in a very subtle way, take the defenses down. And it makes the candidate feel more comfortable. And if they're more comfortable, they'll be more open with you. Whereas traditionally, I was always taught, tell me, like very, where you're under a big light shining on you, like you're an interrogation. And then we always say, could you share a specific example? That is your power phrase. And then you just pull that to something related to the job. So something very simple. If it's a customer service job, you might say, could you share a specific example of a time you had a very difficult customer?
Mm.
And you leave it there. You don't say, how did you resolve it? Or how did you hit it out of the park? Or what, because then you're giving them the answer. You just
Yeah.
want to kind of lay it out there for them. And if they start complaining, or saying how they handed it off to their manager, they're probably not the right fit. But if they explain how they approached it, and maybe they didn't resolve it, but they learned something from it. And so that changes their behavior for the future. Then you're getting some really good really good data on whether this person will work in your company.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I love that. Putting that out there, allowing them to speak about that. And I'm a lawyer by trade, so you're not leading them. It's completely open ended. As a lawyer, you're taught never to ask open ended questions, right?
Mhm.
To lead them. But I love that. That's wonderful not to put them on the defensive, and to touch on the engagement factor. I think that's wonderful. Also, like I have a young son going through the application process with all these big companies in college. I'm like, and he submits applications and he doesn't hear back for weeks, like nothing, like not even maybe we got it and stuff like that. And that just, it doesn't make that person really feel wanted, right? Or special or anything. So I love that you make your engaged non-AI. It's kind of person to person, right? To get them and to really bring them in a nice, wonderful format. So we have engage, and then the last step, I think you're touch. It's what is the last step?
So we went through engage,
Yep.
assess.
Yep.
The last step is motivate.
Got
And,
it.
and I want to mention this is a circle,
Yeah.
right? You're going to have to go back and forth, and motivate especially is throughout the employee life cycle and beyond. And that's about setting them up for success. And we could talk for hours about that. But if you did the work and really hired based on your core values, you want to make sure you're that you are living the core values, and everybody at the company is living the core values and being celebrated and appreciated for showing up in the way that you want them to. And there are all sorts of ways to do that. And one of my favorites that I did when I owned my spa was we really focused hard on the core values. And so one day I decided, I think I read a book of something similar somebody had recommended. And so I ordered these postcards that had our core value, like I got printed on it, all of our core values. And on the other side was our logo with a big thank you on it. And then the rest was blank. And so we taught our team that whenever you observe somebody on the team, could be, a coworker, a manager, vice versa, didn't matter, that you would fill out this card thanking them and just say specifically which core value you saw them living and what did they do? What was it? What was the observable behavior? And I really thought it was going to have to be a big push to get people to do this, but they just jumped into. I had 35 employees, and it was just so amazing. And actually, I left for a couple of days and came back, and in the break room, the walls, the refrigerator, even into the hallway were covered with these filled out postcards. And I
Uh-huh.
oh my God, what have we started? But that was one of my favorite ways to get the team engaged and really feel like the core values were part of who we were.
Yeah, really interesting. That's awesome. I love that. You got to keep people motivated, and you got to find out what motivates them, right? People are motivated for different things. But the motivation, so in the hiring process, so I guess as you're getting close to maybe doing the interview, making a hire, are you implementing that motivation kind of in the hiring process, or that's once they become on board?
That's a really good question. I was actually thinking about that a little bit this morning, because often we lose candidates right before, especially if you know, they're interviewing. So they probably are interviewing for other jobs, and, they may have accepted a job, but then another job seems better. And I think you really need to start that connection process, well, right at the beginning,
Hmm.
but especially once they've accepted an offer, they might not be starting for a week. So send them little videos saying, from different future coworkers, even if it's just a text message and they don't want to do a video. But you know, we're so excited for you to start. we have your name tag ready, or we have your desk ready, whatever it is, so they know that you have started preparing for them, you're excited for them to start. You want to make, we all have anxiety when we're starting something new. So any information, parking, how to get there, best places to eat lunch, anything, think back, of what you would want to have known when you were starting a new job. And then when they come, make a big deal of it, not be ready for them. Oh my God, that's probably the biggest mistake I see constantly, is they're not ready for the new person to start, and then the new person feels lost. And you want to make sure that new hire has a win as soon as possible. If not within the first day, then within the first week, because you are still wooing them.
Yeah.
You don't have them yet.
Yeah. That's a great point. That's a great point. Andrea, this has been really, really informative. I mean, I really appreciate your time. This is why I love talking to experts about people with stuff that I'm really not that familiar with, and just seeing that kind of the magic behind it and everything, and so many great points. We'll definitely put, information out there on the notes and everything of the show for anybody that wants to reach out to you. But in closing, I mean, maybe as we talk about this and, the talent experts and trying to find that right hire, putting them through the process, is there any parting words or idea that you would maybe put out there to say, hey, listen, if you are looking to go into this and through the hiring process, like, what would be the one most important thing that they should keep in mind as they're going through this really important process to try to find that person?
I'm going to say what I started with, and focus on that define piece of it. You can find a couple of articles on it if you go to my LinkedIn, but the real root of it is take some time, get your leadership team together and just brainstorm the people you've had in different roles. Maybe there's a role that is turning over a lot. Well, think about the people who were really successful in it, and just start writing down stories. And then you can put that into, say, Chat GPT, and say, tell me what success traits are showing up from these stories or observable behaviors, so that I can recognize the right person next time I see them.
Yeah, awesome. We'll definitely do that, and hopefully we'll get those LinkedIn articles, and hopefully we'll link to them in the show notes. I mean, hopefully our listeners will want to see them. I want to see them. I want to read them. I want to learn. Thanks so much, Andrea, for your time.
Thank you, Steve. This has been fun.